Free agent big board. There are still some big name free agents who have not agreed with the team. Those names are highlighted on the board. We've got all the latest on those and so much more as we welcome you to the show. So glad to be with you today. A lot of news still flying around. Adam Schefter, Louis Riddick, Dan Orlovsky. Let's dive right into it, Adam, as we start here. What is the latest on Aaron Rodgers?
We continue to wait for word from Aaron Rodgers about where he would like to play quarterback in 2025. The belief around the league is that ultimately he could land in Pittsburgh. The Steelers remain the favorite to land his services, but Aaron Rodgers has not committed to Pittsburgh, nor the New York Giants, nor to even the idea that he will play football this year, although people think he will. But again, you never know with him until we hear from him. DeAndre Hopkins reached agreement with the Baltimore Ravens on a one-year deal worth up to $6 million. The Ravens, he now will rejoin in Baltimore. Derrick Henry, who we played with in Tennessee. The Ravens have had great success finding former Tennessee football players. Steve McNair played there, and they're going to hope for the same thing from DeAndre Hopkins. Meanwhile, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to reach agreement with the Seattle Seahawks on a one-year deal worth up to $5.5 million. Seattle looking for more help for its quarterback, Sam Darnold. And so Sam Darnold and Marquez Valdez-Scantling will have the chance to hook up in Seattle this upcoming season, him catching on there with the Seattle Seahawks. And late last night, Joey Bosa reached agreement with the Buffalo Bills, who earlier in the offseason released Von Miller. Now reach agreement with Joey Bosa on a one-year, $12.6 million deal. Goes to Buffalo to provide pass rush help for Josh Allen and company. A lot of people thought he might wind up in San Francisco. That was never really an option. Never really an option. Never really realistic. Buffalo came strongest and hardest. Washington checked in to see about his services. Buffalo is the team that lands Joey Bosa in the end.
Yeah, the Bills are very active in the last 24 hours. And in fact, their quarterback spoke today. Let's listen to this from Josh Allen.
Just trying to continue to get better and find a way to bring a Lombardi trophy to Western New York. And that's, I think that's why Beane's kind of doing what he's doing in the free agency period right now of the guys that he's brought in. Bringing in a guy like Josh Palmer, who's proved that he can play at a high level. And I'm looking forward to working with him and adding him into that wide receiver group. And the defensive side, I think we've added some real ballers. So I'm very excited about that too. And I'm looking forward to getting to work with those guys.
Yeah, Buffalo's been making a lot of moves, extending a number of guys, highlighted, of course, by Josh Allen, inking a 6-year extension on Sunday worth an NFL record $250 million guaranteed. And the Bills agreed to terms with free agent wideout Josh Palmer, who you just heard Allen mention, while retooling their front seven a bit, including the deals that Adam just touched on, while also cutting Von Miller. That was a cap-saving move, of course. Dan, what do you think of the Bills adding Joey Bosa?
Joey Bosa is going to matter a lot more in November, December, January than I think he will in September and October. I think this is one of those guys that you slow play, you load manage in many ways. You don't overuse him early on in your season because he's kind of the we got to finish games type of person. Here's the reality for Buffalo. Your last 5 playoff losses, you've given up at least 27 points in each of those 5 losses. You average defensively giving up 32 in those 5 playoff losses, all while your quarterback in those 5 games has gone 20 touchdowns and 3 giveaways. That should win you the game. And so defensively, it has to be the focus point. I like the Michael Hoyt addition. I like the Bosa addition. I don't think the Buffalo Bills defensively should be done, but this very much so is a late season playoff type of addition to their football team pass rush wise.
Yeah, they got to manage him. That's for sure. And make sure that he can finish out the season. So the combination of him, A.J. Epinesa, I mean, these guys, Greg Rousseau, who just got a contract as well, I mean, that's a pretty formidable front. I think they still have to do some work probably in the back end to make sure that the coverage principles are able to be locked down with consistency so they are able to close out games, not just because of pass rush, but because of the fact that they can take the ball away, make sure they play tight man coverage in all the necessary situations. But you just got to like the kind of things that they're going about doing. Like if we just switched it over to the offensive side of the ball, and I know we're showing Joey here, and we know just how good of a pass rusher he is at multiple positions at defensive end, and if he was moved down inside. But the Josh Palmer addition is huge because you know what he is? He's kind of a blend of And then at the same time, you know, he gives you a little bit more size on the outside as well. and he's just so smooth with the way he runs routes. I think that one right there for me, I know we talked about it early on in the free agency period that I thought Josh Palmer was one of those under-the-radar guys that could really wind up having a breakout season. Man, for him to go now and play with Josh Allen, that's two pretty good quarterbacks he's been able to play with.
I ask you about Rasul Douglas, their corner as a free agent, because I go back to the Kansas City game when I think Benford went out in that game, Christian Benford went out, and all of a sudden it was man coverage and they could not cover anybody. And so while I love the Bosa addition, they got to get a dynamic kind of difference maker in their back seven, at least, if not two. Where's Rasul Douglas at?
Well, and he's a free agent right now, and look, that may be an area that they address in the draft. We'll see how that happens. You touched on an important point with Joey Bosa. I think when I spoke to some teams around the league last night, they were a little surprised that he would pick Buffalo, where it's going to be colder, where he's going to be playing on turf. There are a couple of elements that with his injury history they wondered about. They thought maybe he would be better off in a warm weather environment playing on grass. But look, he obviously wanted to go to Buffalo, saw something in the Bills. The Bills came at him aggressively, and that wound up being the choice.
You also wonder, too, if the Bills illustrated how they would load manage, how they would make sure that he stayed healthy. All that, of course, we have to see how it plays out. But that had to be a part of it, right? All right, so we mentioned that DeAndre Hopkins found a new home. We were talking about him at the end of yesterday, and then he ended up being able to go on with the Ravens. Baltimore, big signing. They snagged him. Now, DeAndre Hopkins has been very productive despite a never-ending carousel of quarterbacks in his career. D-Hop has caught a touchdown from 14 different passers. The only other former first-team All-Pro selections to catch a touchdown from that many different guys are Larry Fitzgerald with 16 and Hall of Famer Jerry Rice with 14. And look at this post from 2020. Pretty interesting. Hopkins posting a photo of himself, Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry with the caption, quote, "How many touchdowns would this trio total?" We're going to find out. Well, foreshadowing there. Lewis, how much of an impact do you see D-Hop making in Baltimore?
I think it's huge, and not just, strictly talking about on the field. They raved about him in Kansas City as far as his effect on the wide receiver room. From a maturity standpoint, from a football intelligence standpoint, the way he communicated with Patrick, the way he communicated with the rest of the wide receivers. I think, for me, that wide receiver room in Baltimore, look, Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman can both benefit from being around a guy like this, even though, his best days are probably behind him. And in these critical moments of critical games in the playoffs where you see Baltimore kind of self-destruct some, I think his presence could be one that has kind of a calming influence because of that personality that he brings and that leadership that he brings. So I think this is more than just about what he does on the field. I think this is the kind of personality and profile you're looking for, which is something I don't think was lost on Baltimore.
The luxury.
Yeah.
It's a luxury addition, but also go back to Week 18 last year. Baltimore playing against Cleveland. Zay Flowers gets hurt.